when the dust of battle finally settled and the clanging of swords faded. A Roman battlefield wasn't just a scene of destruction, it was almost a theater of the unexpected. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, of bodies lay sprawled across the ground, tangled with broken armor, shattered spears, and abandoned shields. But the most striking thing wasn't the carnage itself. It was what came next. The Romans didn't just leave the dead to rot in the sun. They had a system, a quiet, precise, and highly organized machinery ready to turn chaos into order. In Rome's eyes, even death had rules. The first priority after a victory wasn't celebration. It was tending to the wounded. Special squads scoured the battlefield, listening for faint groans, tiny movements, a weak breath. Every sign of life mattered because it could mean the difference between life and death. Soldiers with minor injuries were treated on the spot by field medics, the Medici, or quickly transported to the valetudinaria, the makeshift hospitals near the front lines. Those with more severe injuries got intensive care, though many wouldn't survive beyond a few days. And make no mistake, this wasn't just about compassion. A healed soldier was a resource regained for future campaigns. While some focused on saving lives, others faced a grim task counting the dead. Centurions and record-keeping officers would move among the fallen, identifying their men. Every legionary carried identification plates called signaculum, a small lead disc noting their name unit and hometown. This allowed Rome to update troop rosters and gave families some comfort. Dying for Rome was an honor, but being forgotten was a disgrace no one could tolerate. Next came burial. For the Romans, it wasn't merely a sanitary measure. It was a deeply religious ritual. The soul of the deceased couldn't rest if the body remained exposed to the elements or scavenging birds. So even in wartime chaos, they dug mass graves or built funeral pyres when time and resources allowed. Soldiers often contributed from their pay to a communal fund to ensure dignified burials, a practice known as collegia funeraticia. Their comrades promised to care for the remains and mark the grave, even if it was just a simple inscription in stone. Not everyone got the same treatment. Officers and high-ranking commanders received special honors. When Centurion Gaius Crastinus fell at the Battle of Pharsalus, his men raised a commemorative tomb at their own expense. In exceptional cases, like the monuments at Adamcles or under Emperor Trajan obelisks, listed thousands of names, turning sorrow into eternal glory. Amid all this solemnity, practicality ruled too. Cleaning the battlefield was urgent for public health. Decomposing bodies spread disease and demoralized both troops and nearby civilians. Military engineers, the architecti and fabri, inspected the area, removed corpses, repaired trenches, dismantled temporary structures, and eliminated infection risks. It was a complex logistics operation, almost as disciplined as battle itself. Weapons, shields, and armor were collected, repaired if necessary, and redistributed. Damaged equipment was melted down to create new tools of war. Valuable steel didn't go to waste, and enemy weapons of good quality were either added to Roman arsenals or kept as trophies. Even the treatment of fallen enemies followed careful rules. Once Roman soldiers were attended to, deciding the fate of enemy corpses was both complicated and politically delicate. Protocols varied based on who the enemy was. For respected foes like Carthaginians, Macedonians, or unified Gallic tribes under leaders like Vercingetorix, the Romans might allow their soldiers to retrieve their dead. Sometimes, Romans buried them as a display of magnanimity, a form of propaganda showing that mercy reinforced Rome's prestige. But for enemies considered barbaric or rebellious like insurgent slaves or tribes resisting Romanization, treatment was far harsher. Many bodies were left to rot in the sun, a silent but unmistakable warning: submit to Rome or decay forgotten. In some cases, the bodies of enemy leaders were mutilated or displayed publicly. Heads could be sent to Rome or paraded in forms to cement the general's victory. These acts weren't random cruelty. They were ritualized, reinforcing Roman power and serving as symbolic punishment. Even after death, the enemy could serve Rome. Corpses became tools of humiliation, while Roman soldiers also participated in sanctioned looting. Jewelry, coins, weapons, and even clothing were claimed from the dead. Generals had the authority to permit or restrict this, balancing morale with discipline. Poor management could spark serious disputes, as historian Titus Livius notes after the victory at Cosagus, where unequal distribution of spoils caused conflicts among soldiers. Meanwhile, religious ceremonies continued. War for the Romans was sacred. After every battle, rituals were performed to appease the gods. One of the most important was the lustratio, a purification of the army. Animals were sacrificed, prayers were said, and troops were blessed before returning to civilian life. Failing this could mean spiritual contamination from the battle, affecting all of Rome. For the most successful generals, the ultimate reward was the triumph, a spectacular ceremony requiring Senate approval. Generals paraded into Rome in horse-drawn chariots, dressed in purple togas, followed by soldiers, prisoners, and spoils. Weapons, enemy standards, and even the remains or representations of defeated leaders were displayed, showcasing Roman supremacy. Behind this grand display was invisible, indispensable logistics. The Fabri engineers left battlefields safe, removing bodies, cleaning contaminated zones, repairing fortifications, and dismantling temporary installations. Potential sources of infection, like blood pools or organic waste, were neutralized, sometimes with quicklime. Weapons were evaluated: useful ones redistributed, damaged ones melted down, and exceptional pieces preserved as temple trophies or monuments. Even materials from the enemy could be recycled, symbolically turning foreign strength into Roman glory. Everything was meticulously recorded: funerary plaques, inscriptions, military tablets. Rome didn't just win battles, it documented them. The number of dead, the names of notable fallen, recovered equipment, and individual soldiers' participation in cleanup or burial were all noted. Obsession with order extended beyond combat to the very effects of death. When war ended and the last fires were extinguished on the battlefield, the Romans didn't rest. They fought another battle against decomposition, chaos, and forgetfulness. No loose ends remained, not even among the dead. But the story doesn't end with cleaning and burying the dead. Once the immediate chaos was managed, the Romans shifted focus to another layer of post-battle strategy: propaganda morale, and the subtle assertion of power. Every move, every decision about the battlefield sent a message both to their own troops and to the wider world. When an enemy's bodies were treated with respect, it wasn't just kindness. It was a signal that Rome was a power that could be magnanimous when it suited them. Conversely, leaving bodies to rot or displaying the heads of defeated leaders wasn't brutality for its own sake. It was calculated intimidation, a warning that resistance came at a visible, undeniable cost. Even looting, while appearing chaotic, was orchestrated. Soldiers knew that valuable items recovered from the enemy could boost their own fortunes, but generals controlled the flow carefully. Allowing the troops to claim spoils could raise morale, reinforce loyalty, and reward bravery, but unchecked plundering risked disorder and disputes. Historical records like those from Titus Livius show how quickly mismanagement could ignite conflict. After the victory at Cosagus, uneven distribution of loot sparked serious disagreements among soldiers, demonstrating that managing victory was almost as crucial as winning the battle itself. Religious observances remained central to post-battle routines. Romans believed that every campaign carried spiritual consequences, and proper rituals could shield the state from divine wrath. The lustratio, the purification ritual, wasn't just ceremonial, it was essential. Sacrifices, prayers, and blessings reaffirmed the army's bond with the gods and ensured the spiritual health of the soldiers, and by extension, Rome itself. Skipping or botching these rituals was unthinkable. Spiritual contamination could, in theory, ripple through the entire republic or empire. For victorious generals, the ultimate stage was the triumphum. These celebrations were carefully choreographed spectacles of power, pageantry, and messaging. A general parading through the streets of Rome wasn't just returning home. He was demonstrating the might and reach of the Republic. Soldiers marched behind him. Prisoners of war were displayed spoils of battle flaunted, and enemy standards, weapons, or representations of defeated leaders were shown to the public. Even the minutiae mattered: the color of the general's toga, the white horses pulling the chariot. The sequence of participants all communicated Rome's dominance and the glory of its victorious commanders. Meanwhile, the engineers of the fabric continued their meticulous work. They were the unsung heroes of post-battle order, ensuring that what remained of the battlefield didn't threaten future operations or public health. They removed corpses, repaired fortifications, dismantled temporary structures, and neutralized contamination. Blood waste and organic matter were cleared or treated with quicklime to prevent disease. Weapons armor and other equipment was sorted. Usable items were redistributed, broken pieces melted down, and exceptional finds preserved as trophies. Even enemy materials could be recycled, symbolically transforming foreign might into Roman assets. Every action, from burial to recycling of materials, was carefully recorded. Roman officials maintained exhaustive logs noting the names of fallen soldiers, quantities of recovered equipment, and the participation of specific individuals in cleanup or burial tasks. Monuments, plaques, and stone inscriptions preserved these records for posterity. Victory in Rome wasn't merely a matter of force. It was a narrative meticulously constructed, documented, and remembered. The post-battle phase also included managing the psychological impact on troops. Witnessing death and devastation firsthand could demoralize even the most disciplined legionary. By controlling the environment, overseeing burials, and ensuring that ceremonies and rewards followed quickly, commanders maintained order and morale. Soldiers saw that their sacrifices were recognized, that their comrades were cared for, and that their victories would be honored in both practical and symbolic ways. These actions reinforced loyalty and cohesion, critical components for an army constantly on campaign. Handling the enemy dead was a particularly delicate aspect. For enemies considered honorable or formidable, allowing burial rites or respectful treatment was a way to demonstrate Rome's magnanimity. For those deemed barbaric or rebellious, leaving bodies to decay or displaying their remains served as a public demonstration of Rome's absolute authority. Every corpse could become a tool, whether to honor, intimidate, or propagate the image of an unstoppable state. The messaging was deliberate, a strategic extension of the battlefield itself. Sustaining the army was another ongoing concern. Recovering and repairing weapons, armor, and equipment was as vital as tending to the dead. Roman logistics ensured that nothing of value went to waste. Arms were repaired and redistributed. Damaged metals were melted down for new tools of war. Exceptional enemy gear could become trophies in temples dedicated to gods like Mars or Jupiter. This wasn't just frugality, it was practical strategy intertwined with symbolism, converting enemy strength into Roman power and prestige. Recording every detail was as important as executing every task. Inscriptions, military tablets, and funerary markers created a lasting archive. Rome documented the dead, the equipment recovered, the contributions of specific soldiers, and the overall impact of each campaign. These records reinforced order, ensured accountability, and allowed future commanders to learn from each operation. Rome's obsession with precision extended from the battlefield to the afterlife of the soldiers and the management of their achievements. In short, what might seem like grim, bureaucratic post-battle work was actually a carefully orchestrated process that combined strategy, ritual, propaganda, and practical management. Rome didn't simply fight battles. It controlled how those battles were remembered, how the living and the dead were treated, and how power was communicated through every detail. Even when the last torch burned out and silence fell over the battlefield, Rome's work had just begun. The army moved from active combat to an equally vital fight against disorder, decay, and forgetfulness. corpses, weapons, and the memory of the dead were all part of a broader system, ensuring that Rome emerged not only victorious in battle, but dominant in narrative and order. And yet, beyond logistics, records, and ritual, there's a human side to this story, the way Romans dealt with loss, memory, and honor. Even in the midst of war, they found ways to respect individual lives and preserve the identity of each soldier. The signaculum, those small lead identification discs, weren't just bureaucratic tools. They were a promise that no one would be forgotten. We will not forget you. Each name recorded, each body identified, was an acknowledgement of a life given to Rome, a life woven into the larger narrative of the Republic or Empire. Soldiers often took personal responsibility for their comrades' burials. Contributions to the Collegia Funeratia weren't simply financial. They were acts of loyalty and fraternity, ensuring that a fallen comrade received a proper resting place, even a modest one. Reinforced bonds among soldiers and gave families a tangible connection to their lost loved ones. And while officers and prominent leaders might receive grand monuments, the care given to ordinary legionaries was no less systematic. Every grave, every pyre, every recorded death maintained the sense that every life and every death mattered to the Roman machine. Then there was the balance between mercy and intimidation. Rome's treatment of enemy corpses reflected its dual approach: honorable treatment for those seen as worthy adversaries, harsh punishment for those considered rebels or traitors. This wasn't just practical or political, it was messaging. Public displays of decomposing bodies or mutilated enemy leaders weren't acts of mindless cruelty. They were calculated, sending a clear message to allies, subjects, and foes alike. Defiance carried consequences. Meanwhile, respectful burials for honorable enemies projected Rome as just controlled and magnanimous a power that could wield mercy as effectively as steel. Looting and the management of spoils also tied into this message. Soldiers claimed personal rewards. Yes, but the general's oversight ensured the army remained disciplined. Valuable items recovered from the dead coins, jewelry, weapons were collected, catalogued, repaired, and redistributed. Exceptional items might be displayed in temples or monuments, demonstrating that Rome could transform the resources of conquered peoples into lasting symbols of Roman glory. Nothing went to waste, and every piece told a story of victory and dominance. Religious and ritual practices remained central, weaving the spiritual with the practical. The lustratio, sacrifices and prayers, weren't mere formalities. They reinforced cohesion, morale, and spiritual safety. The army was purified, and the gods were appeased, making it safe for soldiers to return home or march on to the next campaign. Every ritual, every action was part of a carefully maintained balance between human military and divine order. Documentation completed the cycle. Every burial, every recovery, every ceremonial act was recorded. Stone inscriptions, plaques, military tablets, they all captured the details of battles, the names of the fallen, the quantity of equipment recovered, and the contributions of individual soldiers. Rome didn't just fight, it archived. Victory was both physical and narrative. By controlling how events were remembered, Rome ensured that its power and discipline endured long after the battlefield was empty. Even the aftermath of war, removing corpses, cleaning contaminated zones, repairing fortifications, neutralizing disease was part of a broader system. These efforts were invisible to most, yet they were essential. The Fabbri and engineers worked tirelessly to leave the battlefield safe and functional. Quicklime was applied to accelerate decomposition and disinfect areas. Weapons were sorted, repaired, or melted down, and exceptional finds preserved as trophies. Every step reflected a blend of practicality, symbolism, and strategy, turning the chaos of death to an instrument of order and power. Through all these layers, logistics, ritual, propaganda, and honor, the Romans demonstrated a singular obsession with control. They understood that victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy on the battlefield, it was about managing the consequences of death the memory of the fallen and the perception of strength. Corpses, equipment, and monuments were all tools in a larger system that combined practical necessity with political messaging. By the time the fires of the last pyres burned out and the echoes of combat had faded, the Romans had done more than survive. They had imposed order, recorded history, and cemented their legacy. Death was acknowledged, honored, or used as a message. And the battlefield became a controlled environment where Rome's reach and discipline were absolute. Soldiers, citizens, allies, and enemies alike could see the message: Rome was in charge always. If this glimpse into Rome's hidden rituals after battle fascinates you, think about the precision planning and discipline required to manage not only the living, but also the dead. These weren't random acts, they were deliberate, strategic, and symbolic. And while the chaos of battle might grab headlines, it was the aftermath, the care, the recording, the rituals, and the logistics that truly showed the depth of Roman military genius. So next time you picture a Roman battlefield, don't just see the clash of swords or the fall of soldiers. See the system behind it, the meticulous, unyielding organization that turned death into order, sorrow into memory, and chaos into power. That's the story Rome left behind, not just on the battlefield, but in history itself.